A waitress fed an elderly woman daily, until her son, a millionaire CEO, arrived with 20 SUVs. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. Mary was just an ordinary waitress, working at a small diner in a quiet part of town. Every day, she worked long hours, making sure the customers were well taken care of, cleaning tables, serving food, and keeping the place running. But it wasn't just the usual routine for Mary. She had a special connection with one of the regulars, an elderly woman named Grace. Grace had been coming to the diner for years. She was a quiet, gentle woman, always sitting at the same table by the window, watching the world go by as she sipped her coffee. Mary noticed how lonely Grace seemed, so over time, they developed a quiet bond. Mary would make sure to give her a little extra attention, refill her cup without her asking, and bring her favorite homemade pie when it was fresh out of the oven. Grace, in return, would always offer words of wisdom, speaking softly about life, family, and the things that mattered most. One snowy morning, as the storm outside raged on, Mary noticed that Grace had arrived earlier than usual. Her fragile figure was bundled up in layers, but Mary could see the weariness in her eyes. "Are you feeling all right, Grace?" Mary asked as she poured her coffee. Grace smiled faintly, nodding, but her hands shook slightly as she took the cup. "I'm just tired, dear, but I'll be fine." Mary was about to offer some extra care when she noticed a man standing in the doorway of the diner, his coat soaked with snow. He walked in, shaking off the wet flakes as he looked around. Mary had served hundreds of customers, but this man, in his sharp, tailored suit and expensive watch, stood out. He looked around with an air of authority, as if he was used to being in control of every situation. He walked past the tables, his eyes catching on Grace sitting by the window. The man froze for a moment, clearly recognizing her. It was then that Mary noticed something strange. The man wasn't just any customer. He was Grace's son. She had never seen him before, but there was no mistaking the family resemblance. The way he looked at Grace, the way his eyes softened, was unmistakable. Mary watched the scene unfold as the man made his way to the table, kneeling beside Grace. He spoke softly to her, his voice filled with concern. "Mom, I'm here. I'm so sorry it's taken me this long to come back." Mary stood frozen for a moment, not knowing what to do. The man turned to her then, his gaze intense as he spoke. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just surprised to see how well you've been taken care of, Mom." Mary nodded, not sure what to say, feeling both embarrassed and touched by the situation. But before she could respond, the man did something that shocked her. He turned and called to his assistant, a woman in a dark coat, standing by the door. "Call the cars. Tell them to bring 20 SUVs. We're taking my mother home." The words hung in the air like a dream, and Mary found herself staring at him, trying to process what was happening. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a life-changing moment for her. Mary stood in the middle of the diner, her mind racing as she watched Grace's son kneel beside her. The man, who had just entered, was nothing like the customers she was used to. His sharp suit and expensive watch screamed wealth, but his eyes were soft as he looked at Grace. The contrast between his composed exterior and the vulnerability he showed in front of his mother was striking. Mary took a step back, trying not to intrude on their moment, but it was hard to ignore the growing tension in the room. She could see the genuine concern in his eyes as he spoke softly to Grace, his voice low but steady. "Mom, I've missed you so much," he said, his words almost breaking Mary's heart. Grace smiled faintly, her frail hand reaching out to touch her son's cheek. "I've missed you too, my dear. But I've been fine, really." The man's face softened even further, his eyes scanning the diner before meeting Mary's gaze. "You've been taking care of her?" he asked, his voice both thankful and curious. Mary nodded, not knowing how to respond, feeling like an outsider in their moment of reunion. "You've done more for my mother than I ever could," he continued, his tone heavy with regret. "Thank you." Mary felt a mix of emotions, surprise, confusion, and a bit of guilt. She wasn't used to being thanked for simply doing her job, Grace had been a regular at the diner for years, and Mary had always made sure she was well taken care of, but this felt different. The man stood up and turned toward the door. "We need to get her out of here. I've arranged for the cars to come," he said, his voice firm. He waved over to his assistant, who had been waiting at the entrance. "Tell them to bring the SUVs. We're taking her home." The words left Mary stunned. SUVs? Home. It was as if he were talking about something far beyond a simple meal at a diner. She had never imagined that the elderly woman she had been caring for was the mother of someone so powerful. The thought of the high-end vehicles, the wealth, the power, it all seemed so out of place in the humble diner. Mary watched as the assistant made a call, her eyes scanning the room as she walked toward the kitchen. The storm outside was getting worse, and Mary knew that soon. The place would be filled with the sound of engines and the arrival of luxury cars. But for now, the diner was quiet, the only sound being the soft clink of dishes and the occasional murmur from a customer. As Mary stood there, feeling the weight of the moment, she couldn't help but wonder how this would all unfold. What did this mean for her? What did it mean for Grace? She had always known Grace as a kind, quiet woman, but never had she imagined the woman was the mother of a millionaire CEO. She had never asked Grace about her family. Grace never spoke of them. Mary didn't know what to think. She watched as the man, Jason, looked at her once more. "Thank you again," he said, his voice sincere. "You've given my mother more comfort than I could have ever provided." Mary smiled softly, unsure of how to respond. "I'm just doing my job," she replied quietly. But Jason's expression shifted slightly, as if he knew there was more to the story than she was letting on. "It's not just your job," he said. "You've done something more. I'll make sure you're taken care of for this." With that, he turned away and walked out of the diner, leaving Mary standing there, her heart racing. The door chimed as it closed behind him, and Mary stood motionless, trying to process everything that had just happened. She had no idea what the future would hold, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. Mary couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief as she stood in the now quiet diner. Jason's words echoed in her mind, but she didn't have time to process them. The snowstorm was worsening, and the diner, once warm and filled with the hum of conversation, now felt oddly still. She moved around the empty tables, her mind racing with questions. Who was Jason, really? And what did his offer mean for her? It wasn't just the SUVs, the sudden wealth, or the way he'd spoken to her. It was the underlying tone of something deeper, something personal. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of engines approaching. The unmistakable roar of luxury cars filled the street outside, and she saw the headlights through the frosted windows. The storm had made it nearly impossible to see anything clearly, but she knew what was coming. It was impossible to ignore the grandeur of it all. The door to the diner opened once more, and in walked Jason, followed by several men in suits. The sight of them was surreal. They didn't belong here, not in this little diner. But here they were, with an air of quiet power and authority that sent a ripple through the atmosphere. "Mary," Jason said, his voice low but steady. "I hope you don't mind, but I've arranged for some accommodations for you and Grace. I wanted to make sure you're both taken care of." Mary looked at him, her mouth slightly agape, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean, accommodations?" she asked, still processing the situation. Jason smiled faintly, almost as if he knew she would ask. "I'm bringing Grace to my estate," he explained. "You've cared for her in a way no one else has. I want to make sure she's comfortable, and I want you to be comfortable as well." Mary's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a thank you. This was something far bigger. She had no idea how to respond. "I'm just doing my job," she said, almost mechanically. Jason shook his head gently. "It's more than that," he insisted. "I've been neglecting my mother for too long, and I realize I haven't been there for her in the way she needs. You've stepped in, and for that, I'm grateful." His words were sincere, but Mary felt overwhelmed by the weight of his gratitude. She had never expected this, never imagined that her simple acts of kindness would lead to something so extraordinary. Jason's assistant, a woman in a black coat, stepped forward and handed Mary an envelope. "This is for you," the woman said. Mary took it with trembling hands, unsure of what was inside. She opened the envelope to find a check for an amount that made her gasp. It was more than she had ever earned in a year. "This is too much," Mary said, shaking her head. "I didn't do this for money." Jason's expression softened. "I know," he said quietly, but it's a small token of appreciation for everything you've done. You've helped me more than you'll ever know." Mary's thoughts were a whirlwind. The diner, her modest life, her work, all of it felt so distant now, as if she were living in a dream. She wasn't sure what to do with the money, with the offer, with the change that was suddenly sweeping through her life. But one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. As the days passed, Mary found herself caught in a whirlwind of change that she could hardly believe. It was as if everything she had known, everything she had worked for, had been turned upside down in the blink of an eye. The check Jason had given her, the luxurious cars, the offer to take Grace to his estate, it all felt surreal. She kept telling herself that this was just a moment, a brief chapter in her life that would eventually settle down. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that nothing was going to be the same. One afternoon, Mary found herself standing at the entrance of the diner, looking out at the quiet street. The snowstorm had finally passed, leaving the world outside covered in a blanket of white. The storm had been a symbol of everything that had changed in her life. Unexpected, powerful, and impossible to ignore. As she stood there, lost in thought, the sound of an engine approaching caught her attention. She looked up and saw a sleek black SUV pull up to the curb. Jason stepped out of the vehicle, his figure imposing yet somehow softened by the cold air. He walked toward her, his eyes scanning her face as if trying to read her thoughts. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said, his voice calm but filled with sincerity. "But I want you to know that I'm here for you. For both you and Grace." Mary nodded, still processing everything. She had never imagined that one act of kindness, feeding an elderly woman daily, would lead her to this moment. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know how to repay you." Jason smiled, but it wasn't a smile of pride or self-satisfaction. It was a smile of understanding, as if he truly knew that this wasn't about money or gifts. "You don't have to repay me," he said. "You've already done more than enough. You've given my mother the one thing she needed more than anything, someone who cared." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had never thought of herself as someone who could make a difference in someone's life, not in the way Jason was describing. But here she was, standing in front of a man who had millions, yet it was the simple, genuine care she showed to his mother that had left a mark on him. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Jason continued, "about how you've been there for her when no one else was. I want to help you, help both of you. This isn't just about taking care of Grace. It's about helping you have the life you deserve too." Mary felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, this kind of offer. It felt foreign, uncomfortable, yet deeply moving. She had spent most of her life taking care of others, never imagining that someone would want to do the same for her. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason took a step closer, his gaze steady and kind. "I want to make sure you have everything you need," he said. "I want to help you achieve your dreams, whether it's going back to school, starting your own business, or anything else you've ever wanted. You deserve more than just scraping by." Mary was silent for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always dreamed of more than just working in a diner, more than struggling to make ends meet. But she had never allowed herself to believe that those dreams could come true. Not for someone like her. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I've never had someone offer me something like this." Jason reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said. "Just know that I'm here, and I want to help you however I can." In that moment, Mary realized that everything was changing. Her life, which had once been so small, so limited, was now wide open with possibilities she had never imagined. And it was all because of one simple act of kindness. As she looked at Jason, she saw something in him that she hadn't noticed before. He wasn't just a powerful CEO. He was someone who understood the value of compassion, of giving without expecting anything in return. And that was something Mary could respect, something she could trust. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you," she said again, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I don't know how to accept this, but I will try." Jason smiled, and for the first time since they had met, Mary felt a sense of peace. She didn't know where this journey would take her, but for the first time in a long while, she was ready to find out. As the weeks passed, Mary's life began to shift in ways she never imagined possible. The check Jason had given her was enough to pay off her bills for months, but it was more than just money. It was a symbol of everything that had changed. She found herself constantly thinking about Jason's offer, about the dreams she had put on hold for so long. She had always worked hard, always done what was necessary to survive, but now, for the first time, she felt like she could actually breathe. One afternoon, she was sitting at her small kitchen table, sipping her coffee and staring out the window at the quiet street. The snow had melted, leaving behind the remnants of winter, and the world seemed to be waking up. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence, and she picked it up, seeing Jason's name on the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello," she said, her voice a little unsure. "Mary," Jason's voice came through, smooth and reassuring. "I've been thinking about our conversation. I want to make sure you're not feeling pressured by all this. Take your time to figure out what you want." Mary felt a rush of gratitude. She had been thinking about his offer constantly, but now she realized just how much pressure she had been putting on herself to make a decision. "I appreciate that," she said, her voice steady. "I've been overwhelmed, but I also know I need to take this opportunity seriously." Jason's tone softened. "You don't have to decide everything at once. Just know that the offer is there. No rush." She smiled, feeling the weight in her chest lift just a little. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "I'll think about it." They talked for a few more minutes, Jason offering some advice and reassurance, before the call ended. As she put her phone down, Mary sat back in her chair, her mind racing with possibilities. She thought about Grace, who was now settled comfortably at Jason's estate, enjoying the care she had never imagined possible. Grace had been so grateful, but Mary hadn't seen her since she moved to the estate. She missed their quiet conversations, their shared moments. It felt strange, knowing that Grace was so far away, but she was happy knowing that she was being well cared for. Mary had visited the estate once, for a brief tour, and it was everything she could have imagined and more. Grand, elegant, yet somehow welcoming. It made her feel out of place, but at the same time, it was a reminder of everything she had always wanted: security, comfort, a life without struggle. She could see herself there, in a life filled with opportunities and possibility. But then there was the question of her own dreams. What did she really want? She had spent so many years putting others first, making sure Grace had everything she needed, making sure the diner ran smoothly, that she had forgotten to ask herself what she truly wanted out of life. Did she want to go back to school? Did she want to start her own business? Or was there something else entirely that she had never dared to consider? As these thoughts swirled in her mind, she found herself walking to the window, looking out at the world beyond. The street was quiet, but it was also full of life. People walking by, going about their business, children playing in the yards. Mary realized that the world was vast, and her place in it was not yet decided. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. What mattered was that she had the chance to explore, to figure out what she really wanted. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The future was uncertain, but it was full of promise, and she was ready to embrace it. With a deep breath, she turned away from the window, ready to begin the next chapter of her life. Mary spent the next few days in a daze, as if she were living in a dream. Every moment felt surreal. This life she was now living was not the one she had imagined for herself. The offer from Jason lingered in her mind, and she found herself wondering what the future held. She still hadn't fully processed how everything had changed so quickly. She had gone from working at a diner, barely making ends meet, to being offered a chance at a new life, one full of possibilities. Yet, with every opportunity that came her way, a part of her hesitated. It wasn't that she didn't want change, she did. She had dreamed of something more, something better for so long. But the thought of stepping into a world so different from the one she had known made her uneasy. She had spent so many years taking care of others, first her family, then Grace, that she had forgotten how to take care of herself, how to put her own dreams first. As she sat in her small apartment, looking out the window at the bustling city below, she realized just how much she had sacrificed. But now, for the first time, she had a chance to live for herself, to choose a path that was her own. The next day, she made her decision. She called Jason. "Jason, I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "And I'm ready to take the next step. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I know I need to do something more with my life." Jason's voice on the other end of the line was warm and encouraging. "Mary, That's exactly what I wanted to hear. You don't have to have everything figured out right away. Take your time, but know that I'm here to support you. Whatever you need, just let me know." His words brought a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had been afraid of making the wrong choice, of letting herself down, but now she understood that she didn't have to have all the answers. It was okay to take it one step at a time. Mary decided to visit Jason at his estate the following weekend. She had only been there once, for a brief tour, but she knew she needed to see it again. This time, she wanted to understand more about the world Jason lived in. As she drove up the long, winding driveway, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The estate was even more magnificent than she remembered. Huge, elegant, and surrounded by lush gardens and sprawling lawns. She felt out of place here, like a small fish in an ocean of wealth and power. But as she stepped out of the car, Jason was waiting for her, smiling warmly. "Mary," he said, walking up to greet her. "I'm so glad you could make it. Come on in, let me show you around." He led her inside, where the grand entrance hall greeted her with towering ceilings and exquisite decor. Everything in this house screamed wealth. Yet there was something about the way Jason carried himself that made it all feel approachable, like he wasn't just a man of money, but someone who understood the value of kindness and integrity. As they walked through the estate, Jason showed her the gardens, the art collection, and the vast library that seemed to go on forever. "This place," Jason said, looking around, "it's everything I've worked for. But it doesn't mean anything without the right people to share it with. And you, Mary, are one of those people." His words took her by surprise, and she felt her heart swell with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. She had never thought of herself as someone worthy of this kind of attention. She had always been the caretaker, the one who helped others, but here she was, being welcomed into a world so far removed from the one she had known. By the end of the tour, Jason led her to a quiet corner of the estate, a small patio with a view of the gardens. "Take a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair. "I want to hear your thoughts on everything." Mary sat down, feeling the weight of the moment. She had always dreamed of a life like this, peaceful, full of opportunity, but she had never allowed herself to believe it was possible. And now, here she was, not just living in this world, but being offered a chance to thrive in it. "I don't know where to start," she said honestly. "This is all so overwhelming." Jason nodded, his expression understanding. "It is a lot, I know, but I want you to know that you don't have to do anything you're not ready for. Take your time. You have the rest of your life to figure it out." His words were like a balm for her anxious thoughts. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had permission to dream, to reach for something greater without the fear of failing. She looked at Jason and smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle in her chest. She wasn't sure where this journey would take her, but for the first time, she was ready to find out. As Mary sat in the quiet corner of Jason's estate, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. It was as if she were on the edge of a new beginning, yet unsure of what steps to take next. The world around her, so vast and filled with possibilities, seemed both overwhelming and inviting. She had never imagined that one decision, one moment, could change everything. She had spent most of her life working hard, caring for others, but now she was faced with the opportunity to live for herself. It felt like a dream. Jason's offer was still fresh in her mind. He had given her the chance to start over, to follow her own path, yet a part of her hesitated. She had never truly thought about what she wanted beyond the simple comforts of life. She had focused on surviving, on making sure others had what they needed. Now, with the weight of the decision ahead of her, she realized how much she had put her own dreams on hold. "You deserve more," Jason's words echoed in her mind. It wasn't just about money or comfort. It was about the opportunity to find fulfillment, to create a life that felt meaningful. But was she ready for that? As she sat there, contemplating the next steps, she heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching. Jason appeared in the doorway, his calm presence filling the space. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said with a small smile, "but I wanted to see how you were doing. I know this is a lot to process." Mary looked up at him, meeting his gaze. His words were kind, but there was a sincerity in his voice that made her feel as though he truly cared about her well-being. "I'm just trying to figure it all out," she said, her voice quiet. "This is more than I ever imagined." Jason nodded, taking a step forward and sitting down beside her. I understand, he said. You don't have to have all the answers right away. Take your time. But remember, you don't have to do this alone. I'm here to support you in any way I can. Mary felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. She had always been the one supporting others, never truly allowing herself to lean on someone else. But here, in this moment, she realized that it was okay to accept help, to let herself be cared for. Thank you, she said softly. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm grateful for this chance. Jason smiled, his expression warm and understanding. The future is full of possibilities, he said, and I believe you'll make the most of it. You've already shown what kind of person you are. You have the strength and the heart to do great things. Mary wasn't sure what to say in response. She felt both excited and fearful at the same time. The future was unknown, but for the first time, she felt like it was within her reach. Over the next few days, Mary continued to think about what Jason had said. She knew that she couldn't stay in the same place forever, that she had to make a decision. But it wasn't easy. She had spent so many years living for others, working tirelessly to take care of them, that she had forgotten what it was like to live for herself. As she spent time reflecting, she realized that she didn't have to have everything figured out. She didn't have to know the exact path to take right away. What mattered was that she had the freedom to choose, to explore what truly made her happy. One evening, after a long day of thinking, she made her decision. She was going to take the first step toward the life she had always dreamed of. It wasn't going to be easy, and she didn't know where it would lead, but she was ready to embrace the uncertainty and find her own way. She called Jason the next morning. Jason, she said, her voice steady. I'm ready to take the next step. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I want to start. I want to live for myself, for my dreams. Jason's voice was filled with pride. That's the first step, Mary, he said, and I'm proud of you for taking it. Whatever you need, I'm here to help. As the conversation ended, Mary felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, she felt like she was moving forward. The future was hers to create, and she was ready to embrace it. Mary woke up the next morning with a sense of determination that she had never felt before. The decision she had made the day before had given her a newfound sense of clarity, and for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of doubt dragging her down. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to take that first step. She had spent so much of her life trying to make everyone else happy, putting their needs above her own, but now it was her time to focus on what she truly wanted. She had spent the day before, her mind racing with possibilities, thinking about all the things she could do with the opportunity Jason had offered her. She hadn't made any concrete plans yet, but that was okay. She knew that she didn't have to have everything figured out right away. What mattered was that she was taking control of her own life. The phone rang just as she was finishing her coffee. She glanced at the caller ID and saw Jason's name. She took a deep breath and answered the call. Hey, Jason, she said, her voice steady. I've been thinking about everything, and I'm ready to get started. I don't know exactly what my first step is yet, but I'm ready to start moving forward. Jason's voice came through the phone, warm and encouraging. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, Mary. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just need to take that first step. And I'm here to help, every step of the way. Mary smiled as she listened to his words. His support meant more to her than she could explain. She knew that with him by her side, she could do anything. I appreciate that, she said. I'll start figuring it out. I'm going to take my time and make the right choice. The call ended with a few more words of encouragement from Jason, and Mary hung up feeling a sense of calm. She didn't have to rush this process. She had time, and she had the support she needed to succeed. For the next few days, she spent her time reflecting. She thought about her life, her dreams, and the possibilities that lay ahead. She knew she wanted more than just a stable job. She wanted a life that was meaningful, a life that felt fulfilling. The idea of going back to school, of pursuing something she was passionate about, started to feel like a real possibility. Mary had always been the kind of person who put others first, but now she understood that she had to put herself first for once. One afternoon, as she sat in her apartment, her phone buzzed with a message from Jason. Mary, the message began, I know this is a big decision, but I wanted to remind you that I'm here to help however I can. If you need advice, guidance, or just someone to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out. The message gave her a sense of reassurance. Jason's support was unwavering, and she felt grateful to have him in her corner. That evening, Mary took a walk around her neighborhood to clear her mind. The cool air helped her think more clearly, and as she walked past familiar streets and shops, she realized how much had changed. Her view of the world had shifted. No longer was she just a waitress in a small diner, doing what was necessary to get by. Now, she was a woman with choices, a woman who could shape her future. By the time she returned home, Mary had made up her mind. She would take the first step. She would start by enrolling in a community college to take business classes. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was her first step toward a future that was hers to create. As she sat down at her desk, Mary felt a sense of excitement. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid to dream. She wasn't afraid to try something new, to take risks. And as she picked up the phone to call Jason, she knew that this was just the beginning of her journey. The weeks that followed were filled with small victories and quiet realizations for Mary. As she settled into the routine of her business classes, she began to feel a sense of purpose that had been missing from her life for so long. Every day, she learned something new, something that took her one step closer to the future she had once only dreamed of. But with every passing day, she also realized just how much she had been holding herself back. The woman who had once been too afraid to take risks, too hesitant to reach for her dreams, was slowly starting to disappear. She had made the decision to take control of her life, and now she was living it. One evening, after finishing her homework and taking a quiet walk through the city, Mary received a message from Jason. It was a simple text, but it felt like a reminder of how far she had come. "Mary," it read, "I've been thinking about how far you've come. I'm proud of you for taking the first step. Keep pushing forward." Her heart warmed as she read the message. Jason had been there for her every step of the way, encouraging her to believe in herself when she didn't. The support she had received from him had been a lifeline, but now, she realized, it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had the power to shape her own destiny. The next day, as she sat in class listening to her professor talk about business strategies, Mary realized that this was the life she had been meant to live. She had spent so many years working hard for others, but now she was working for herself. And the more she learned, the more she realized that the future was hers for the taking. A few months later, Jason invited her to dinner at a small but upscale restaurant in the city. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it felt special. When she arrived, Jason was already seated, and he greeted her with a warm smile. "Mary," he said as she sat down, "I've been meaning to tell you something. You've come so far, and I believe in you." Mary looked at him, unsure of what to say. It was hard to believe that she had come this far, that the shy, unsure woman she once was had transformed into someone who was capable of chasing her dreams. "Thank you, Jason," she said softly. "I never would have gotten here without you." Jason smiled again, his eyes filled with warmth. "You did it all on your own, Mary. I just gave you a little push. But it's all you now." That night, as they talked and shared stories, Mary realized that Jason's support had never been about pushing her into something she wasn't ready for. It had been about giving her the courage to take that first step. And now, she was walking on her own, ready to create the life she had always wanted. As the dinner came to an end, and they stood up to leave, Mary felt a sense of fulfillment settle in her chest. This was only the beginning, and while she didn't know exactly where her path would lead, she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer afraid to walk it alone. She had the power to change her future, and for the first time in her life, she was ready to embrace it fully.